45M here has a confession to make. I discovered a few years ago that I have a peculiar ability. I can see into the future. At first, it was just flashes, moments of clarity in the chaos of life. I'd see things like minor car accidents or a friend's surprise engagement. These visions were often mundane, and I dismissed them as coincidences or figments of an overactive imagination. That is, until I had a vision that changed everything. I have two children, Lily 17F and Jake 15M. They are my world. 3 years ago, I had a vision about Jake that has haunted me every single day since. In this vision, I saw Jake, older and despondent, sitting in a dark room. The vision was blurry, but the sense of dread and despair was palpable. I couldn't make out the details, but I knew something terrible was going to happen to him. At first, I convinced myself that it was just a bad dream. But as time passed, I couldn't shake the feeling that it was more than that. I saw glimpses of Jake's future. He was struggling with something I couldn't quite understand. I saw him in pain, his bright eyes dulled with suffering. The visions came sporadically, but they were always the same. Jake was in trouble, and I couldn't figure out how to help him. I tried to be the best father I could. I spent more time with Jake, hoping that my presence would change his future. I encouraged his interests, supported his dreams, and tried to teach him resilience. But the visions continued, each one more distressing than the last. I saw him retreating from us, his family, and turning to unhealthy coping mechanisms. The guilt ate at me. I felt like I was living a lie, hiding this terrible secret from my family. I thought about telling my wife, Maria 44F, but how could I explain something so unbelievable? How could I tell her that I was seeing our son's future and it was bleak? I feared she would think I was losing my mind or, worse, blame me for not doing more. Last year, the visions became more frequent and more vivid. I saw Jake getting involved with the wrong crowd, making choices that would lead him down a dark path. I saw him getting arrested, his future slipping away from him. I wanted to intervene, to scream and shout and shake him out of this future I saw, but I didn't. I couldn't. I felt paralyzed by fear and uncertainty. What if my interference made things worse? What if my attempts to change the future only solidified it? The weight of these questions kept me silent. I watched as my worst fears began to materialize. Jake started skipping school, his grades plummeted, and he became withdrawn. Maria and I argued more, and the tension in our home grew. A month ago, Jake was arrested for possession of drugs. My world shattered. The visions had come true, and I had done nothing to stop them. The shame and guilt were overwhelming. Maria was devastated, and she blamed herself. She asked me why I hadn't seen the signs, why I hadn't done more to prevent this. I wanted to tell her the truth, but I couldn't bring myself to do it. I felt like a coward. Today, I stand here, a broken man. I failed my son, my family, and myself. The future I foresaw has come to pass, and I am consumed with regret. I see Jake every day, trying to pick up the pieces of his shattered life, and I know that I could have done more. I should have done more. I am haunted by my ability to see the future and my failure to act on it. How do you live with the knowledge that you could have prevented something terrible but chose to remain silent? Ike, hello Reddit. It's been a while since my last post, and I have a lot to share. After my initial confession, the overwhelming support and advice from this community gave me a renewed sense of purpose. I've taken a long, hard look at my life and my abilities, and I've made some significant changes. Opening up about my visions was one of the hardest things I've ever done, but it was also incredibly liberating. To my surprise, my therapist didn't dismiss my claims. Instead, she encouraged me to explore my abilities further and to use them for good. She reminded me that I couldn't change the past, but I could certainly influence the future. The first step was learning to trust my visions and understand them better. I started keeping a detailed journal of every vision I had, no matter how trivial it seemed. This helped me to recognize patterns and become more attuned to the details. I also practiced meditation and mindfulness to help clear my mind and enhance my focus. Over time, my visions became clearer and more frequent. One of my earliest opportunities to use my abilities for good came unexpectedly. I had a vision of my neighbor, Mrs. Thompson 68F, suffering a severe fall in her kitchen. In the vision, she was alone and unable to call for help. I couldn't ignore it. The next day, I went over to her house under the pretense of borrowing some sugar. While we chatted, I subtly steered the conversation towards safety. I noticed her kitchen rug was loose, and I offered to help fix it. She laughed it off, but I insisted, and she eventually agreed. A week later, she thanked me, saying she had indeed tripped over the rug but had managed to catch herself. It was a small victory, but it felt monumental. Buoyed by this success, I began to pay closer attention to my visions. I saw a friend's teenage son, Tom 16M, getting into a serious car accident due to reckless driving. I reached out to my friend, under the guise of catching up, and subtly suggested taking Tom to a defensive driving course. I even offered to pay for it as an early birthday gift. My friend thought it was a great idea, and Tom ended up attending the course. A few months later, he narrowly avoided an accident, thanks to the skills he learned. My friend was grateful, though he had no idea of the true reason behind my suggestion. The biggest challenge, however, remained within my own family. Jake was struggling, and I knew I had to find a way to help him. My visions of his bleak future were relentless, but I was determined to change the outcome. I started by spending more one-on-one time with him, trying to understand his struggles without pushing too hard. We went on long hikes, fished, and worked on projects around the house. Slowly, he began to open up. One night, I had a vision of Jake relapsing after a period of recovery. I saw him at a party, surrounded by people who didn't have his best interests at heart. The fear of seeing him spiral out of control again was overwhelming. I decided to be honest with him, to an extent. I told him that I had a bad feeling about his current group of friends and that I was worried about him. To my surprise, he listened. He admitted that he wasn't happy and that he felt pressured by his peers. We found a local support group for teenagers dealing with substance abuse and mental health issues. Jake was hesitant at first, but I attended the first few meetings with him for support. Slowly, he began to find solace in the community and started to rebuild his life. The visions of his future began to change. They weren't perfect, but they were better. One of the most profound experiences came when I had a vision of a woman, Emily 29F, being attacked in a dark alley. I didn't know her personally, but I recognized the area from my vision. I couldn't sit idly by. I went to the police, but they were skeptical. "Nate, I saw her. Emily was walking down the alley, and I noticed a man following her." Feeling desperate, I decided to stake out the location myself. For several nights, I watched the alley from a distance, feeling a bit like a paranoid vigilante. On the third night, I saw her. Emily was walking down the alley, and I noticed a man following her. I called the police immediately and intervened, shouting and making noise to scare the man off. The police arrived just in time to catch him. Emily was shaken but unharmed. I never told her the full story, but seeing her safe was enough for me. Through these experiences, I've learned to embrace my abilities and use them to make a positive impact. It hasn't been easy, and I still struggle with the weight of the past. But I'm trying to move forward, one vision at a time. I've also started volunteering at local community centers, using my insights to help identify potential risks and prevent accidents. I've even begun to work with a small group of like-minded individuals who believe in the power of intuition and foresight. My relationship with Maria has also improved. After months of therapy and open communication, I finally told her about my visions. She was shocked, of course, but over time she began to understand. We're working together to create a safe and supportive environment for Jake and Lily, and for the first time in a long while, I feel hopeful about the future. Thank you, Reddit, for giving me the courage to share my story and for your unwavering support. Your advice and kindness have made a world of difference in my life. I will continue to use my abilities to help those around me, and I promise to keep you all updated on my journey.